Yale University, Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, temperature controlled, humidity controlled, security controlled. Inside, behind glass, is a book, 240 pages of vellum, written in a language nobody can read, 600 years. Every major intelligence agency that has ever broken a code has looked at it. Every linguistics department that cares about unsolved problems has taken a run at it. An artificial intelligence system that cracked the German Enigma machine looked at it. Nobody got in. The book sits there, available to anyone with an internet connection. The full digital scan is public. Nobody can read a word. The book that answers nothing. 240 pages, an unknown language, plants that don't exist in nature, women in green pools connected by tubes, 600 years of complete silence. But there is a theory, not about what the book says, about why it was written the way it was written. And that theory is darker than the book itself.
6 layers. The darkest one is last.
The Discovery. 1912. A Polish book dealer and rare manuscript collector named Wilfrid Voynich is in Italy. He has made a deal with the Jesuit college of Villa Mondragone, outside Rome. The Jesuits need money. They are selling manuscripts quietly without advertising the fact. The kind of sale that happens in back rooms. Voynich goes through the collection, and he finds something that stops him. A manuscript written in a script he does not recognize, illustrated with images he cannot identify. He knows manuscripts. He has spent his career handling them. He has no reference point for what he is holding. He buys it. He spends the rest of his life trying to read it. He fails completely. Voynich was not an amateur. He had spent decades in the manuscript trade. He had handled forgeries, rarities, texts in dead languages. None of that prepared him for this. Now here's the part most people don't know.
The Jesuits had this manuscript for decades before Voynich bought it. A Bohemian scholar named Johannes Marcus Marci wrote a letter about it in the 1600s. He sent it to the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher, along with a request to decipher it. Kircher was one of the most learned men in Europe at the time. He had published studies of Egyptian hieroglyphics. He had written on cryptography, music, optics, and medicine. If anyone in the 17th century could read an unknown script, Kircher was the man. Kircher apparently could not. Before the Jesuits, the manuscript passed through the hands of Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire, who paid 600 gold ducats for it in the late 1500s. 600 gold ducats was not a casual purchase. Rudolph was a collector of unusual objects, scientific instruments, artworks, and curiosities. He ran what was known as a Kunstkammer, a cabinet of wonders. He paid serious money for this book. Before Rudolph, a letter accompanying the manuscript suggests it may once have belonged to the English astrologer John Dee, who traveled through the courts of Europe in the 1500s carrying strange manuscripts. Before that, silence. The chain of ownership goes back into the early 1500s and then disappears. The book was already old when Rudolph bought it, already unreadable, already mysterious, and nobody thought to write down where it came from. Before you find out why no one was supposed to read this, check your subscription and leave a like. Let's continue. What is inside? 6 sections, each one stranger than the last. The botanical section comes first. Illustrations of plants, detailed, careful botanical illustrations of the kind you would find in a medieval herbal, a guide to plants and their medicinal uses. Except none of the plants exist. Some sections of some illustrations resemble real plants. The overall form, the leaves, the root structure, familiar enough to suggest the illustrator had seen real plants. But not one plant in the entire botanical section has been definitively identified as a real species.
Botanists have looked. They have matched parts of images to parts of real plants. No complete match anywhere. The plants are real enough to look like they could exist, not real enough to be found. The astronomical section follows. Circular diagrams, stars, figures that might be constellations, or might be something else. Symbols that don't match any known astronomical notation, arrangements that suggest a system of some kind. The system is not identifiable. Then the biological section. This is the part that people remember. Naked women, submerged in green liquid, connected to each other and to a network of tubes, channels, and basins. The figures are drawn in a consistent style, rounded, fleshy, calm-looking. The system they are embedded in is elaborate and interconnected. What it represents has generated more theories than any other section of the manuscript. The cosmological section contains what some researchers call rosettes, complex circular diagrams that might be maps, or topographical representations, or cosmological models, or something else. The pharmaceutical section shows vessels and plant parts, arranged in ways that suggest recipes or preparations. The recipe section is dense text, with no illustrations at all. Whatever is in that final section, the author apparently decided it needed no pictures, only words. Words in a script that nobody can read. That last part is not a figure of speech. All 6 sections are written in the same script that appears nowhere else in the world, not in any other manuscript, not in any inscription, not in any fragment recovered from any archaeological site on Earth. Researchers have compared the Voynich script to every known writing system, every major language family, every known cipher system from every culture, every shorthand notation from the medieval period, every alchemical symbol system, every astrological notation. Nothing matches. A writing system used in exactly one document in all of recorded human history. And that document is currently sitting in Yale's climate-controlled vault, waiting. Who tried to crack it? During the Second World War, British military intelligence used the Voynich manuscript as a training exercise. If their cryptanalysts could crack an unknown medieval script, the reasoning went, they would be better prepared for the codes they actually needed to break. These were not casual code enthusiasts. These were the people who worked at Bletchley Park, the people who broke the German Enigma cipher and helped turn the war. Among the most skilled cryptanalysts ever assembled. They could not crack the Voynich manuscript. American cryptographers working on Axis ciphers during the same period attempted the same exercise. They failed. After the war ended, the National Security Agency of the United States officially took up the manuscript. The agency that broke some of the most sophisticated encryption systems ever designed. The agency that has cracking codes as its core institutional mission. They studied it. They published nothing. No solution. No partial solution. No framework that gave others a way forward. In 2016, an artificial intelligence system that had successfully deciphered the German Enigma machine was applied to the Voynich manuscript. The system analyzed the statistical patterns in the text. It identified the language as most likely Hebrew. Researchers attempted translation based on this identification. The results were fragments, disconnected words, nothing that could be read as a coherent sentence. In 2019, a team from the University of Alberta announced that they had identified the language as an ancient form of Hebrew with Arabic roots. They produced translated phrases. The phrases did not make sense. No independent confirmation was obtained. Then someone asked a different question entirely. The manuscript may not be encrypted in the conventional sense at all. Conventional encryption takes a readable text and transforms it according to a key. If you have the key, you reverse the transformation. You get readable text. What if the Voynich manuscript was not written in cipher? What if it was written in a language, a complete, functional language that was known to its author and intended readers, and nobody else? Not a code to be broken, a language to be learned. A language with no surviving speakers. No dictionary, no grammar, no related texts, nothing to learn it from.
If that is what this is, then every cryptographic tool ever invented is useless against it. You cannot break a code that is not a code. You cannot decipher a language that has left no other trace. The century of failed attempts may not indicate that the solution is just out of reach. It may indicate that the approach has been wrong from the beginning. Carbon and certainty. In 2009, researchers at the University of Arizona conducted radiocarbon dating on the parchment of the Voynich manuscript. The result? The material dates to approximately 1400 to 1430, the early 15th century. The region of origin suggested by the parchment composition and the style of the script, Northern Italy or Central Europe. Analysis of the ink confirmed consistency with the same period. The manuscript is genuine, not a modern forgery, not a Victorian hoax, not something Wilfrid Voynich manufactured himself, a theory that was seriously entertained for decades after he brought it to public attention. Real parchment, real medieval ink, real 15th century production. Someone in the early 1400s created this manuscript. Not quickly. Parchment was expensive. The preparation of animal skin for writing was a skilled trade. Each page required the skin of one or more animals, properly prepared and treated. 240 pages of prepared parchment represents a significant financial investment, the kind of investment that required either wealth or institutional backing. The illustrations are detailed and consistent throughout, each one carefully drawn, each one drawn with evident purpose, intended to convey something specific. The script is uniform across the entire manuscript, produced by what appears to be a single hand, or at most 2 or 3 hands working in a coordinated system over time. The worst part is still ahead. This was not a casual project. This was not a prank. Someone invested months, possibly years, of sustained effort in producing this object. Someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who had a reason, a purpose serious enough to justify the expense and the time. A purpose that required 240 pages, not 10, not 20, 240. Whatever this book contains, the person who made it believed it was worth that much parchment, that much ink, that much time. The manuscript was made deliberately, expensively, and carefully. The question is not whether the maker was serious. The question is what they were serious about. The theory that changes everything. In 2023, a researcher named Gerard Cheshire at the University of Bristol published a paper. His argument? The Voynich manuscript is written in proto-Romance, a language that preceded all the modern Romance languages. The ancestor of Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian. A language that would have been understood across a wide swath of medieval Europe by educated people, but that was not written down in a standardized form and left few traces. The author, Cheshire argues, was a Dominican nun. The intended reader? Another nun, or a small circle of nuns. The content: gynecology, obstetrics, the treatment of women's illnesses using plants and other preparations, medical knowledge, practical, detailed, applied medical knowledge of the kind that had been accumulated in women's religious communities over centuries. And here is why it was written the way it was written. The 15th century was not a safe time to be a woman who practiced medicine. The Inquisition was active across much of Europe.
Women who treated illness using plants and herbal preparations were suspect.
Women who had knowledge of childbirth, of female anatomy, of the treatments that helped or harmed a pregnancy. These women were exactly the people the Inquisition was looking for. Midwives, herbalists, healers. Women who had accumulated knowledge over lifetimes and who passed it to their daughters and apprentices. They were arrested. They were put on trial. They were tortured into confessing whatever the inquisitors had decided they were guilty of. They were burned. Their records were destroyed. The books in their possession were taken and examined. If the books could not be explained, they were destroyed. If Cheshire is right, the Voynich Manuscript was a deliberate act of protection, written in a way that would be readable to those who knew the key, written in a way that would be meaningless to anyone else, written specifically to survive a search by people who would destroy it if they understood it. The fake plant illustrations would look like a botanical herbal, common, ordinary, nothing suspicious. The women in pools would look like strange decoration, unusual but not dangerous. The unreadable text would look like a cipher or a foreign language, confusing but not incriminating. The academic community has not accepted Cheshire's interpretation. Too much is speculative. Too much cannot be independently verified. The specific proto-Romance reconstruction he proposes has significant gaps. The mainstream position remains, the manuscript is unsolved. But that's not the strangest part. Nobody has fully refuted it. Nobody has published a systematic demolition of a theory that closes off every avenue. It sits in the literature as rejected, but not disproven, which is a different thing. What the silence means. The Inquisition in the 15th century was not primarily a theological operation. It was a knowledge operation. It identified, located, and eliminated sources of knowledge that it considered dangerous. Dangerous not because the knowledge was heretical in a technical theological sense. Dangerous because it gave women, specifically women, independent authority over life and death. A midwife who knew how to manage a complicated birth had knowledge that no priest could challenge or correct. A herbalist who knew which plants caused contractions and which stopped fever had knowledge that operated entirely outside the church's framework. She did not need a priest to validate what she knew. She knew it because she had learned it, because someone had shown her, because she had done it hundreds of times and seen what happened. This knowledge was accumulated over generations, passed from woman to woman, grandmother to daughter, from healer to apprentice, from monastery to monastery along trade and pilgrimage routes. Centuries of accumulated practical knowledge about the body, about birth, about illness, about what helped and what harmed. Knowledge that had no institutional home, no university taught it, no church sanctioned it. It lived in the memories and the manuscripts of the people who practiced it. And the Inquisition was systematically finding those people and destroying both. When a woman was arrested and burned, her records went with her. When a monastery was searched, the books that could not be explained were taken or destroyed. What remained had to be hidden, or written in a way that it could not be read by those who searched it. And then there is the other thing, the chain of transmission. If the Voynich Manuscript was written to be readable to a specific group of people, the group that held the key, then the key was transmitted separately from the book, not written down in a way that could be found, carried in memory, passed from person to person, the way all the dangerous knowledge was passed. And if those people were found and arrested and burned, the chain broke. Not because the book was destroyed, the book survived, because the people who knew how to read it did not. The manuscript is sitting in Yale right now. Digital scans available to anyone with a computer. Full resolution, every page, every symbol, downloadable, free, and completely sealed. Not because the key was never written down, because the people who carried it in their heads
were killed before they could pass it on. The Inquisition did not destroy the book. The Inquisition may have destroyed the ability to read it, which was, possibly, a more effective form of destruction than burning the pages. Burning pages leaves ash. Killing the readers leaves a book that looks whole and means nothing. 600 years later, the book is still whole, still means nothing, still waiting. The scans are online. The researchers are still working. The algorithms are still running.
And the women who could have told us what it says have been gone for 6 centuries. Whatever they knew about healing and birth and the treatment of bodies and the plants that helped and the plants that harmed, that knowledge may be in this book, locked in a script that was designed to be unbreakable by those who wanted to destroy it, and is now unbreakable by everyone, including us. The book achieved exactly what it was designed to achieve. It survived everything. It passed through inquisitors' hands. It crossed 5 centuries. It traveled from Italy to Prague to Rome, and eventually to New Haven, Connecticut. Every person who handled it failed to understand it. The Jesuits who sold it could not read it. Emperor Rudolph, who paid 600 gold ducats for it, could not read it. Athanasius Kircher, the most learned man in 17th century Europe, could not read it. The cryptanalysts who broke the German Enigma machine could not read it. The artificial intelligence that cracked that same code could not read it. The book is still doing its job, 600 years later, still protecting whatever is inside, from everyone. Whether it needs protecting anymore is another question. The Inquisitors are long dead. The danger is long past. But the protection worked so well that the knowledge, if it is knowledge, may be gone forever. The lock outlasted the lock's purpose, and nobody left behind the key, not written down, not hidden somewhere we have found. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The book is still there. The readers are not.